Welcome back, everybody, to the VHS Vault. I am your host, VHS Jace, and next to me, of course, is the great man, Jason Roy Gaston. Mate, we are here continuing the Superman franchise, and here we are. We've Christopher Reeve, unfortunately, is no more in the role. They've needed to recast, redo the movie, and we end up at 2006. Superman Returns. And Jace, let me ask you this. How many iterations of Superman did they have in between Superman 4 and this 2006 film, do you think?
Well, they had several animated series, and then they had Lois and Clark, and they had the Superboy syndicated show, which was highly underrated but super cheap. And
successful for them. Yeah.
And did they have any other TV shows?
Well, let's think about the movies. We have the infamous Kevin Smith script.
Oh, you're talking about things that didn't make it to screen.
That's right. From film, so let me rephrase that then, as you just pointed out. Yeah, think about all the iterations that we had. We had the Kevin Smith version. We had the Tim Burton version with Nicolas Cage. We had a J.J. Abrams script called Superman Flyby.
Yes, which honestly sounded really neat. Mm-hmm. I really like the idea from that script, and I kind of wish they'd gone with that one. Which, in case you don't know, it deals with Superman basically being immortal.
Yeah,
and I really like that.
I'd have to revisit it, but I remember some certain parts of it. They had a McGee version going for a while, and then with all these,
I remember McGee. Whatever happened to him?
Not much. They also, remember, they were planning to do a Batman and Superman film directed by Wolfgang Peterson.
Oh, wow.
Back in the early 2000s as well. But I think what happened, and then Warner Brothers they got scared every step of the way with every different Superman script that tried to deal with different things. Clearly, they got scared. So Bryan Singer comes in one day and goes, let me just make a sequel to Superman 2. And they liked that very much. And that was, I don't blame the studio for that, feeling like that's the right way to go at the time.
I do.
Put it that way.
I do.
I just don't think they knew how to handle Superman, the character. So for them, if they can harken back to the more successful films, I get why they're trying to do it. And the reason I'm mentioning it now so early in this review, because it's a theme that runs through this review for me, is good intentions turned really bad. And this film, to me, that's even the making of and the idea to make this version is a good idea turned really bad. Do you remember your initial reaction?
Is accurate. Do I remember what?
Seeing it the first time at cinema, I'm sure you went opening weekend like the rest of the world did.
I did. I went opening weekend, and I can tell you right now, the opening sequence with the Superman theme blaring, and I was smiling, and I was just like, yeah, this is going to be fantastic. And then 10 minutes later, I was going, why is this not fantastic? Why am I sleepy?
Oh, and it does start at the beginning, really, which is... Like, dude, have you ever seen the deleted scenes for this movie?
Where he flies to Krypton? Why did they delete that?
It completely sets up the whole arc of him.
Yes.
And they don't. They even give you a misdirect in the opening where I believe this until I saw the deleted scenes, that was them reenacting him as a baby being shot out of Krypton. But in fact, it's not. That's him in the ship that he arrives back on, on Earth with. So there's a misdirect there. It doesn't feel right. Now, we're going to give a big heap of love. I think we should, because I think you will agree with me, for Brandon Routh. As a first big Hollywood movie, doing, one of the toughest roles you could ever do, does, I think, a really great job with the junk food trash dialogue and situations he's given. I think he does a great job, and I applaud him, and I think it's a friggin' tragedy that we never got any more films starring him.
I have to agree, and I will say that Brandon Routh did get his he got his redemption story whenever the CW had their Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they brought this particular version of Superman back. He was way more comfortable in the role. He was way more experienced of an actor, and he delivered what I thought was a very fantastic Superman performance. Because by that point in this timeline, Lois was dead. Most of the people in the Daily Planet was dead, because I can't remember, in the comic book it's the Joker. It could be something else, but basically he was the Kingdom Come Superman, who had basically lost everyone who was close to him. But yeah, he was fantastic in that miniseries, even though that miniseries was pretty much garbage elsewhere. He was really great in it. And I do think it's a crying shame that everybody looks at Brandon Routh and say he was a terrible Superman. No, he wasn't. He was not a terrible Superman. It was a terrible movie, but he was a good Superman.
He was a good Superman who unfortunately was written in a horrible way, in the sense that he's the sulking emo Superman. You know, one of the things they wanted...
Emo, pervert, peeping Tom Superman.
Exactly. And one of the things that make Christopher Reeve's films work so much, because there's an element of upbeat, joy, comedy, quirkiness that they completely strip away. And at times, because they make him really uncomfortable character to root for from the beginning of this film, any attempt to try to do any Clark Kent comedy or anything like that just falls flat. This is probably nothing to do with Brandon Routh, but Bryan Singer created one of the most unlikable Supermen ever put to screen, in my opinion. I think it's again nothing to do with Brandon. It's just the way it was. They went for that character.
And you know, it's so strange, because there are other scenes where I think Bryan Singer actually captures that goofy charm of the old movies. And I hate to say anything nice about the guy, because you know why, but it all has to do with Lex Luthor. The Lex Luthor scenes are just almost lifted out of the old Richard Donner films.
We talk about performances, not their personal life, what they have been up to. We'll talk about the art itself, even though I think everybody agrees that Kevin Spacey is where he should be at the moment, and that's not been seen or heard of. Probably should be in a prison, to be honest with you. But nevertheless,
I believe Anthony Rapp.
And nevertheless, he's been found innocent by a court of law, multiple cases in England. I should state that as well. All that aside, his version of Lex Luthor was pretty good, right?
I'm going to give him props. Yeah, he did a really good version of Lex Luthor. As I said, it seemed like there were so many points in this movie that felt like that they were a Richard Donner film. And it's all Lex Luthor dealing with his underlings and Kitty. And I think the most fantastic scene is whenever Lois Lane and her son sneak aboard the yacht, realize what's going on when they see the wigs, and they're like, we got to get out of here. And they start to leave, and Lex Luthor comes out of the bathroom in a robe brushing his teeth, and he's just as surprised to see them. Lois Lane? For a second there, I saw Gene Hackman, is what I'm saying.
There's a nice little kind of subterfuge or a change they make from this Lex Luthor to the Gene Hackman one, where the Gene Hackman one was obsessed with wigs, like he's always wearing wigs and all that. But by the time we do this one, within seconds of the opening scene with him walking out to the family, won't be needing this anymore. So they change it where he only wears wigs when it serves the purpose of what he's trying to achieve.
I did think it was weird that he had such a big wig collection in that yacht, and yet we never saw him use it except for that first scene.
So he was great. Okay, and now one of the worst casting decisions. Again, I like this actress. I think she's very competent. She's been in some good films, but to cast Kate Bosworth as Lois Lane is a huge error on their part. It's just a complete misguided attempt of trying to capture the spirit of Lois Lane. She doesn't really capture the spirit. In fact, they give her this weird dye job of her hair because she's naturally blonde, right? Which makes her look like she has a forehead the size of meat, which you shouldn't have if you're a leading actress. And she just doesn't exude the snappy back and forth go-get-em bravado that Lois Lane has. And I think the fact that she has no chemistry with Brandon Routh too just is even more on top of what is really just such a failure of an interpretation and a failure in casting.
I have to agree, and I think you can link it to what you said about Ralph Superman, is that they not only made the most unlikable Superman, they made the most unlikable version of Lois as well. This was during that time when superheroes had to be broody and serious, and we can't crack jokes and we can't have fun. That's what Lex
You've opened
Luthor's
up
doing.
the real influence here, because at that
Mhm.
time, if you remember 2006, what superhero films were the superheroes happy and enjoying themselves?
None of them.
None, right? Even Spider-Man at that point.
I'm indestructible, I can fly, and I have great powers. My life is miserable.
That's it. X-Men, moody, the bunch of them. Spider-Man, moody all the time at that point. You know, like everything. Even Daredevil, like Ben Affleck, is moody. Like, everything.
I don't know if you remember that TV show Heroes, but I honestly think that's why the first season of that show was such a sensation, was because of Hero, the character, the Japanese fella who got his powers, and it was the best thing in the world, and he was so super happy to have powers. He's like, yes, I have superpowers.
Well, let's face it, we watched that show because of that.
Yeah, everybody watched that and was just like, this guy has powers and he's happy. This is the most realistic show I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because if a spider bit me and I could climb walls and shoot webs out of my butt and fly around, I would be like, this is the greatest thing ever. You can never tell anybody who you are. I'm telling everybody I have a TikTok channel. Yay!
This is also the beginning of the reboots where we reenact the originals kind of thing. We're really in that kind of realm too, because they're so obsessed with this film repeating beats from Superman and Superman 2. It actually creates a real problem for the core plot line of this, because there's nothing really original there's nothing new we get from this Superman film except for a kid. Nothing new. Lex Luthor's plan is the real estate thievery again. That's same thing, right?
I was really excited at first because it seemed like his plan was going to be different, because he says at one point, a god is someone who doesn't share his powers with the rest of the world. I'm like, oh, he's doing something different now. Nope, land. Just,
Man, the whole plot could have been his vengeance to kill. Like, you could have not had that whole kryptonite bit, but he had the dagger. He had the bit that was smashed. And if that was if the climax of the film was Lex Luthor actually getting to kill Superman, maybe that would have worked. But here, all it does is cause a worse prologue than watching Return of the King prologue 17 times in a row. It is such a waste of film and time whenever they kill him, or they attempt to kill him. We know he's not going to die. We don't need 10 minutes of sequences of everybody mourning it. It brings nothing to the table. Anyway, I'm jumping around all over the place, but if you've seen the deleted scenes, which I highly recommend you check out on YouTube, this is my answer to this. Cut out I'm sorry, James Martin, I love you, buddy. You don't belong in this film. You don't need to be in this film at all. You don't actually really, you help out in the third act, but essentially as a character, you don't really add anything extra to these characters moving forward. You get him out of it. You spend more time in the deleted scenes of Superman's mum in the farmhouse playing bridge with Ben Hubbard and things like that, and him trying to cope with him coming back. That should have been the beginning of your film. Cut straight to he's back at Metropolis. He's with Lois Lane. You have your scenes there, and you get straight in the third act. But this movie has about 5 different acts, Jason, and all of them are crippling non-events. There's only one great scene in this movie, and it's the airplane scene.
Yes, the airplane scene was
we all saw in the trailer.
Yes, but it was really cool. Whenever he busts through that wing to go grab the fuselage, I thought that was great. Not only was everything you said correct, but the revelation scenes in this movie were not a revelation. As soon as the kids showed up, it was like, it's Clark's son. Yeah. just nothing was surprising. And you can also tell that so much of this movie ended up on the cutting room floor simply from the fact that Cal Penn is one of the henchmen and says nothing the entire time. Or he maybe has one line. And I'm sorry, that's Cal Penn. He's a fantastically funny actor, very well known. He did not come cheap. I mean, he probably wasn't millions of dollars expensive, but he does not come cheap, at least, for a part that could have been done by an extra. And just for him to be in the background, occasionally picks up something and then gets smushed at the end was such a waste.
Can I just add to that little bit? He was a leading actor who'd already, at that period in his career, had headed up $200 million plus films in those Aaron and Kumar films. He is extremely competent actor and a good actor. Yeah, puzzling, right? So you knew they were chopping a lot. They just weren't chopping the right things, Jason.
No,
that's
I don't
the problem
understand.
With this film.
I don't understand how you can write a script, know that it would be a 3.5-hour movie, and then shoot the whole thing. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know if you saw that movie, that animated movie Flow, about the black cat and the
one that recently won an Oscar.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film, by the way. I was reading an interview with the people who made it, and they were asked about deleted scenes, and they said, "Oh, there are no deleted scenes. We put everything in the movie. Everything that was in the script is in the movie. We couldn't afford to animate anything else." And then I look at these ballooning budgets for these movies where they're spending $300 million in that stupid robot movie from Netflix that I watched maybe 20 minutes of and then got tired of.
The electric boar.
Yeah, the electric boar with Chris Pratt. Stop putting Chris Pratt in movies. We're tired of him. I have nothing against the guy. I'm just tired of him.
And if just a tip, if you are going to put him in movies, wigs look like wigs. Yeah. And that was the worst, most distracting hair in that movie. Go on.
But yeah, I just don't understand how people say, I don't understand why the movie's budget was so high. We shot 4 hours worth of movie and then cut it down to 90 minutes. It's like, write a shorter script. Hone down your scripts. Quit being so wasteful.
Well, if you're going to spend $230 million, Jason, right, you're going to turn around to a studio and you're going to be able to show them that where the money's spent with these massive action pieces and these fights, which do not exist in this film. Famously known for not throwing a single punch in this film, Superman, at all.
No, he really doesn't.
He does not. He is, besides saving the plane, there is so minimal, and the rooftop scene, which is memorable. Again, spoiler in the trailer. The only two big scenes you got, let's just let everyone see them in the trailer. And besides that, he lifts a giant rock. They're your action beats.
He slowly lifts a giant rock and then goes,
pushes it. Who on the surface of the rock, even though he's fit when he gets there, right? But he starts to get a little bit wonky. Is so easily overcome on top of the rock, but spending 15 seconds in the raw sun, he then has the 1,000 times the ability he had when he's on the surface to get under it and lift it up, even though giant spikes of freaking raw kryptonite. So the movie is inconsistent based on that, because based on this version of Superman in that universe, you could hold the green thing near him and he would start to lose his power. I mean, Lex in the original film just held it up. The guy fell in and got chains around him and then was pushed into a lake. So it's inconsistent straight off the bat. The other thing is just nothing to it, Jason. There's not a lot to this film. I still, to this day, and I thought about it hard yesterday, from the beginning of this movie to the end of this movie, what does Superman go through? He gets over a bad mood.
Yeah. And
which he's totally to blame for. This is the biggest problem. He's unlikable. He's unlikable not only on screen. Sorry?
Why didn't the girl I love?
This is not only unlikable on screen. He's unlikable in his departure, because his departure doesn't make sense. He often doesn't even say, look, to the woman I love, I need to do this because why couldn't you tell her? Secondly, the mastermind criminal that you spent years trying to nail down and keep away from the public, you decide not to show up to his court case. Even better, you don't even let anyone know that you're not going to. So you've got an irresponsible, unlikable Superman in his departure, which we're told with lines of dialogue, and which flows on through the entire film. In fact, I even say at the end of it, when Brandon Routh does his to the screen and does the wink, I said 2 words to him, and one of them started with F, and the other one started with O. That's how I felt about him. You can, So it was horrible.
Fire truck oven?
Like it's
not
a likable film.
I remember last time we talked about a Superman movie. It was Supergirl, and I said this is not only the worst Superman adjacent movie, but it's also the worst movie we've done on VHS Vault. But I will tell you something. If given the choice between watching Supergirl or Superman Returns, I will choose Supergirl.
Yeah.
Because Supergirl at least made me feel something. Even if it was negative, it made me feel something. Superman Returns, aside from that swell of nostalgia at the opening credits, makes me feel nothing. This movie is a gigantic vacuum, just eating up 2 hours of your life. It is a story that did not need to be told in a way that makes characters I love seem terrible. And I just look at it, and I look at the money that was spent on it, and I just think, why would you spend this much money and this much talent on something so inconsequential, something that is literally nothing? And I know the talent was there. Yeah, the talent was there. The actors are talented. The director was talented. This movie has a lot of sex offenders.
The writers, those young writers were very talented at the time.
Yeah, and it's just a gigantic ball of nothing.
Just feels like everyone was so full of themselves in the making of this, going, oh, Superman's going on this eternal journey and all that. Nobody had the balls to turn around and go, the audience doesn't want that. All right. Yeah. If you're going to feed them nostalgia, then you need to feed them nostalgia. Don't give a switch and bait, dress it up like a Superman film, and then fundamentally be different in tone and approach. I think it's, man, I know, look, I was even rooting for a sequel with this film. I was very much looking forward to a Brandon Routh sequel. But I got to say, after this rewatch, they were right to pull the pin on that, because Bryan Singer still would have held sway over it. The same writers team would have held sway. And we would have got another, even though this film, I believe, was financially successful, we just would have got more of the same.
Yeah. And
what would we have got? Superboy? What would have the sequel been? Because the kid becomes a liability now moving forward, right?
Yeah, I think that at one point they said it was going to involve Brainiac, which, okay, cool. Brainiac's a cool villain. You know, it should have been the villain of Superman 3, but, whatever.
Okay, so you bring in Brainiac in this hypothetical Superman Return sequel, who then kidnaps the kid, because you would have to do that, because you've got a boy, and hold him, and so, like, I think the studio was smart to go, whoa, like, we messed up here. This doesn't work as a film. It's poor Brandon Routh is obviously gets stuck with that, like branding. And sometimes it's been held responsible, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, man, like I'm sure you're seeing the dailies, and I'm pretty sure the execs would have been worried at that point. What I'm shook about the most, Jason, is the final cut wasn't then held by the studio, and I'm sure it was contractual that they couldn't recut it. But that's what that film needs. You could have turned that to a 90-minute film that would have been a lot better.
Easily.
Mate, it still would have been disappointing, but it would have
taken out the creepy Superman peeping Tom scene. That was just weird.
Well, you established that in 5 minutes in. 10 minutes into the film, right?
Yep.
That he, without permission, is staring in the windows of his ex's house.
Not only staring in the windows, but using his X-ray vision. Because if he was watching then, he's watched other things.
Of course he has. And yeah, that's a violation. And I believe it's illegal what he was doing.
Yep.
But at the same time, we're supposed to be rooting because it's Superman, and Superman only knows best. Yeah, right. Yeah, he only knows best. Not really.
Yeah. I don't care for this movie.
What about the reuse of Marlon Brando for those scenes? I thought that was kind of a nice way to, unnecessary, but it was a nice way to kind of bring it back.
It was because it was a sequel. That's what it was. I mean, come on, it was. The only returning actor.
Now.
The only returning actor is dead.
That's even Marie Saint. I feel sorry for her. Such a classically wonderful legacy actress. She was given some nice scenes and all cut on the cutting room floor, all left to the wayside. And it's a waste, isn't it? It's just everything is a waste here. And I just don't see how you don't have a big action scenes with Superman in this film. Just don't get them.
If they're going to try to do the death of Superman at the end of the movie, why not? Superman, welcome to the continent of Lex's continent. I knew you were going to be here. I had this kryptonite knife ready, but you know what? I'm going to have you fight this guy. Boom, Doomsday. That would have been cool.
Do it. That's what you should have done. But they were not going to kill him. Do it. Make it matter. Make it count. But
and if they'd have done that, then Doomsday probably wouldn't have shown up in Batman versus Superman.
This film to me is the beginning of what I call the pendulum swing, though, because in this film we get no action, not much going on. And unfortunately, like a pendulum, you go from one extreme to the next film in the Superman franchise, which then shoves action down your throat until it makes sure it's reached your lower intestine. In Man of Steel, the next Superman film will be called, which I will say I stand by my enjoyment of seeing it the first time. It hasn't aged as well as I would have liked, but I still have I like some of the themes. But even at that point, at that time, I mean, man, it's emo, unhappy Superman. You think Brandon Routh's emo? Wowzers. Wait till we go back and revisit Man of Steel. So, yeah, for me, this film is, I don't think I'll ever watch this film ever again.
No.
Maybe Brandon Routh, unfortunately, in 50 years passes away. I may go back and revisit just for him. But I think I'd go back and watch Scott Pilgrim to revisit him, to be honest with you.
I'll watch the miniseries from The Flash and Supergirl.
Yeah. No, it's a disaster. In fact, okay, let's do something we normally never do, but I think we're, 5 films in? Is this the worst Superman film out of what we've seen out of the film franchises so far? I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say yes, too, because
I think this is worse
Superman
than Superman 4.
Superman 4 might have been bad, but it at least made me feel something.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was an emotional vacuum.
Just a big ball of nothingness, really. That's what it ended up being. So there you go, kids. That's what we thought of Superman Returns. Super crud. I mean, I'm trying to see, do I have the actual details of how much this thing made? Yes, I do. Here we go. So this film indeed has a $223 million budget. Box office, right? $391 million. So for 223, it made back $391 million. So everyone's saying it's made money. To quote the great Lex Luthor, wrong. It did not. It was a flop because if you've got to add $100 million for marketing, the theaters get 30% of that. It was a disaster for Warner Brothers. So did very well on Blu-ray and DVD, as all movies did in that period. But yeah, it's a very sad. But that's what it is. So at that point, when we stopped hearing about Superman, I didn't think we were going to get any more Superman films. Did you? Did you think that was the franchise killer at the time?
I knew we were going to get one eventually. I did. I mean, it's Superman. You can't keep Superman down.
You really can't, can you?
No.
So, all right. Well, you know what? It's that time again. We didn't do it last episode, but we are going to do it in this episode. We're going to have a look at some of the user comments from the last video that has popped up on your feed in the VHS Vault in a clip that we like to affectionately call Jason. Very clever of us to come up with this name. The comment section. That's right. Let's have a look at some of the comments that we have regarding. So let me just share this screen for you and we'll have a look at a couple of these comments. Here we go. Here we go. So the last film, there's a couple of comments on the movie Supergirl, a movie that we hated but now love more than we hated a couple of weeks ago. All right, and these video comments, a couple of nice ones. There's not much hate this week, which is always a good thing. But the first one I wanted to talk about is everyone seems to be very excited about your choice. Well, it's a user choice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not me. That's Mr. Gibbons.
It's Mr. Gibbons here.
Yep.
He is the bottom quote here. And his response is, yay, more animation. So he's sending a message to us, Jason, that we're not doing enough animation, something we'll have to look at our roster going forward. Love the comment section of the show now. He loves the comment section of the show now. Thank you. That's because it was my idea. Of course, it's great. No, it was a shared idea. It was a shared idea. I can't wait for a certain robot to make his debut on the VHS Vault. Hogarth, you are who you choose to be, the Iron Giant, Superman. So it's a great choice of a film because it does connect to our current franchise we're talking about. So
yes, it does. And again, Vin Diesel's best movie. Not saying that as an insult. I think it's his best movie.
I think we're all excited to go back and revisit a film that I think I said before my son was into, watched it like 20 times in 1999, and then he kind of moved on to something else. I haven't seen it since then. Another frequent great subscriber of the channel, always adds a lot of content, is Sam Althus. I don't know. I'm horrible at the names, guys. Sorry. Ooh, I love the Iron Giant. Can't wait to see that episode. Dreading the Snyder stuff. You and me both, mostly. I don't know if I'm dreading all of it, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. He is good on visuals, and if he has a comic to follow for the story, basically, I would suggest, Jason, he's referring to Watchmen with that comment, but it's terrible when he is writing. I think that's a fair statement to say. Every time that Zack Snyder writes a film, it generally doesn't work out too well. What was it? Rebel Moon Part 1 and Part 2? I didn't even watch Part 2. I didn't even bother.
I watched Part 2 because I hate myself.
In my opinion, here's a big part of the DCU's failure. They should have used the people that made their animated shows. Here, I do agree with that. I think you should have had Bruce Timm and all the other greats of the DC work together. And don't get me started on Sucker Punch. Yeah, nobody should talk about
Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch is great footage to use if you want to cut your own music video. That's it. There's nothing to that movie besides that. I could go on a rant on the problems with that film. Oh yeah, and the reason we may do it. We may do it on the VHS Vault one day, just so I can annoy Jace over there. But yeah, I agree with you. The problem I
may end up liking it.
You may do. I think, and thanks for those comments, guys. I think the biggest problem, honestly, for me, with the whole tone and direction they went down with the Snyderverse, has a lot to do with the success of The Dark Knight. Because at that time, 2008, The Dark Knight is out, mega billion-dollar hit, dark, brooding. And I think Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder, who are friends, got together and wanted to continue that motif. Hence why, we've got a Hans Zimmer soundtrack in The Man of Steel, and they're trying to meld them to kind of together, which was odd because you were never going to get Christopher Bale in a Batman, like offset against Superman. But yeah, I think Zack Snyder is, because they thought they were telling this epic story about gods, which is true and has been very successful in the comic books. The problem there is you've got to make the films watchable.
Yes.
And he just doesn't do that well. He doesn't deal with actors that well, I don't think. But yeah. Great comments. Thank you very much. We've got a lot more. Well, we've got a lot more in the Superman. As we talk, we've got Man of Steel coming up. We've got the Justice League. We've got Justice League, the Snyder Cut. What else have we got?
Oh, you're
a little
forgetting
film called
the Legion of Super Pets.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that. The Legion of Super Pets.
Because we got to pay our
Which will be
respects to
refreshing. Which will be very refreshing to watch after the Zack Snyder.
Animation. They wanted animation. We're giving them animation.
We're giving them animation. And then obviously we're leading up to Superman Legacy and a franchise that will pop back up occasionally too when Supergirl World of Tomorrow comes out in cinemas next year. And is that next year or the year after? You know, so I'm sure we won't ever stop talking about Superman, but I'm just glad we're not talking more Superman about this Superman.
Yeah, I could do it. I could do without this Superman. It's fine, unless he's like in the Crisis on Infinite Earths movie series or mini series, because he was great in that. So yeah, Brandon, we don't hate you. We love you, buddy. It's just we just hate this movie.
You know, it was after the release of this film that we almost got that Justice League. It was the year after that they almost started filming George Miller's Justice League. So even back then, the studio was going, we're going to fix this quick.
Yep.
You know, but that didn't happen either. Oh, well, let's just end it on the bummer tonight. Jace, inspire the people. Tell the people how they can get involved with the VHS Vault, why they should be commenting like our other great followers of the show and the channel do. How do they support us, Jace? We need their help.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, you could always like, subscribe, or comment, especially if you want to be featured at the tail end of the show. Leave a good comment. We ain't putting up the garbage ones. And, of course, you can visit our video description below to find out how you can become a patron of the channel on Patreon by donating as little as $5 a month or more. If you're feeling saucy and sexy, you can also become a channel member and get our videos early. It's all in the video description below, so take a look at it.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I'm going to do a bit of self-plugging here. And if you want to watch some stuff that is rather unique and a bit more risque, go over to the Talking Tubi YouTube channel. I've just dropped episode 5. It's raunchy. It's dirty. It's puerile. Got to go check it out. Talking Tubi, new episode drop. It's a lot of fun. Don't blame me for the commercials. I didn't make them. That's it. Let's get out of here.
Okay, bye.
You don't want to say anything because you're shameless fool plugging your own stuff.
No.